Well, I want to congratulate you on I.S.S. And I want to begin by asking you, Gabriela, about your approach to shooting these vastly different kinds of spaces, one that is literally space and one that is incredibly claustrophobic, really.
Yeah, yeah, that's yes, exactly. One's limitless and one is just all limits.
Yeah.
So Nick Matthews, who's is my DP, he and I shot listed every single second of the film. It was not one of those films that you could sort of like play, like let's just go and see where the actors want to be and how they feel and where the light is. Like we just had to have the whole thing sort of locked down because as you can imagine, the tethers are hooked to a gantry, which means you have to fly the roof off.
Yeah.
It all gets very boring, I know, but like there's just
Super
sort of like
technical.
really technical, incredibly boring. But you just have to have everything prepped first thing in the morning, and ready to go. So you really have to have every visual in your head. And so I knew what I wanted it to look like. And then, I think just Nick was on board with this sort of authentic approach to this thing. Yeah. And, when I wanted to feel claustrophobic, I was like, can we sort of keep remembering that this is zero gravity and can we be upside down a little bit? And can we just sort of just have this unsettledness throughout the whole thing, right? And so there was that, I think that kind of informed those visual decisions that we made together.
Cool. Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you. And then Ariana, how was that for you moving in zero gravity? And I wonder, as a dancer, do you think that figured in at all as well?
I think my dance background was actually very helpful. Being, in a small space, and, working on a diaper. What's it?
Tether.
Harness, tether,
Right,
felt
right.
like a diaper system, like working on this gantry pulley. It's a diaper system. I think being physically inclined and understanding how to move your body is very helpful. But, I felt like I was using every muscle in my body, working very hard in order to simulate weightlessness. But I also think, for me, I'm, thinking back and reliving and the concept of space in and of itself, while you're working in this way, there is no up or down. There just is.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of free myself of the construct of up, down, left, right. Because in space, it doesn't really, or on the I.S.S. specifically, it's all one spherical thing. So I had to orient myself as to, okay, this is what this section of the I.S.S. does. This is where this lives. This is where the food is. And think of it in those terms and how my body was allowed to move within the space, as opposed to now you're going to go up and you're going to go down, because that doesn't actually, or at least for Dr. Kira Foster, it did not apply.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And Gabriela, this film is very sadly prescient, and there's this unity until political and historical factors dictate that there is not. Would you touch a little bit on the horrific, timeliness of everything?
Yeah, so we were in post when this thing seemed to happen, when Ukraine and Russia situation happened. And so like there was a very real moment in a conversation that I had with Mickey Liddell of LD, where he was like, can we even put this movie out? You know what I mean? Like, what are we just saying and all these things? And it was sort of like, for me, I always think that, right? I mean, just again, that documentary side of me where it's like, okay, there's real people, real subjects and real things that I've worked with before. And like, you don't mess around, right? With fiction, with that world. And in this world, it was sort of like, there was a part of me that was like, okay, do we have the luxury? We just have the luxury of these filmmakers to just be like simulating conflict. You know what I mean? And it was just sort of, sometimes it sticks in my craw, to be honest. That said, I was like, okay, but what have I wanted to say about this movie since the beginning? And that is the real toll when these decisions are made on national levels or whatnot, about conflict, whatnot. The toll that's taken is the little people, right? It's very human. And so really just the abstract notions of war or nationalism or whatever, we read about them in the news, just like conflict, war, whatever, but like, okay, but watch that translate into these 6 people in real time and see what that does to them, and these people with their families and with homes and, who actually love each other. And so it's sort of like, my goal was to distill all of that into this very sort of pure, strange, little orb and see what people do. And sort of like, I guess, did I answer any questions by it? No. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't even know if those questions are answerable right now. But
I think you got us to ask bigger questions, though, about
key.
how we relate to each other.
Yeah.
And at least that's what this script brought up for me, and the act of doing the film and then seeing the finished product. I still was asking the same questions, like, these American astronauts and these Russian cosmonauts, very different people from different cultures who have a reverence and respect for science and the cosmos, but they are a thing happens, an extraordinary circumstance ensues, and they are forced to sort of choose. Is it love of country, or can we look at each other as the human beings that we are? And that's a very real thing that we all do today.
Yes.
And it's like harkening back to, like, what did we learn in school? I can tell you I didn't learn much about the Russian people, but I was told a lot about their government. But in my adulthood, I now know that a people are not their government.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
So we have
know
bigger
that. Yeah.
we have bigger questions to ask ourselves. And yes, this is a sci-fi thriller, but I think the humanity that you experience, even within the intensity and the claustrophobia, can lead you to ask yourself some bigger questions.
Right. That's exactly right.
I have to ask you because this is an ongoing conversation that we've had, and Kira is queer, and it is not a meal made out of it, but your platform has widened, and you continue to normalize queer lives and BIPOC lives in all sorts of situations through your storytelling. Would you talk a little bit about what that means to you?
Yeah, no, I feel like the more visible we are, in this circumstance where Kira's queerness is not centered on purpose, because she's more than just her queerness, right? Our identities are vast, and I think allowing her queerness to be part of the story without it being plot dependent is part of that normalization.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm really proud of that, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do this, because you will see that the projects I continue to take on, some are straight, some belong to the queer family, but there's a fullness to their identity and a conversation that I think is fun to have, because it's what we should be doing with each other, seeing each other for the fullness of our identities and not just the one aspect.
Love it.